Trigger warning, this story does involve child's death. My mother-in-law is trying to reconcile with me after she finds out some more news. I lost my son to congenital heart disease, and he did not survive the open heart surgery at the age of 1 and 6 months. He was the greatest blessing I had in my life. Everyone kept telling me things will get easier with time. I know that no matter how much time goes by, I'll still be missing my baby and everything sweet about him. Mother-in-law and I were in constant conflict. Things have always been bad between us, but in those months we reached our limit. She kept getting involved in my son's treatment and criticized every decision I made, claiming that I did not know how to handle my son's illness. We went low contact, but she kept causing issues occasionally. My husband was torn between our son's illness and his mother's issues. When my son passed away, she came to the funeral and caused a scene by arguing with me, knowing I had no energy. She used the fact that everyone was there so she could say it was my fault. My son was born sick, and I did not care about him properly. That I did not listen to her when she suggested other ways or treatments for his condition. And that I was the one who took their grandchild away from them and caused them this heartache. She then loudly called me a bad mother, and I had no idea how I kept my composure and just kept standing on both feet. My mom and sister responded by telling her to leave. My husband was just sitting down crying. She then went to tell everyone I kicked her out as a way to hurt her further, and lied and convinced them that my husband banned her from visiting her grandson's grave. My husband later sent his side of the family an email talking about my mother-in-law's behavior during and after our son's illness, and telling them he no longer will be seeing her. That had the family criticizing us, saying mother-in-law was just trying to do what was best for her grandbaby, calling us selfish, and assuming we're the only ones struggling with this tragedy. We haven't seen his mom in 1 year and 8 months. I'm now 3 months pregnant. No one knew, only my sister-in-law, which is my brother's in-law's wife. But word got out, though we told her not to say anything. A week later, I had family members saying I was invited to a dinner hosted by mother-in-law so they could apologize in front of the whole family and settle this issue before the baby's born. They said mother-in-law was regretful and offered to financially provide for her grandbaby, and they want to see that. I refused, but my husband surprisingly wanted me to go. I had his grandparents calling me, telling me that I'm a person with a good heart and forgiveness is something that I'm capable of doing. I told them I'll never be sitting at the same table with that person who called me a bad mother at my own child's funeral. I still remember it vividly to this day. My sister said this change of heart from my mother-in-law is probably for the new baby. It could be, but I insisted. I won't come. They're saying I'm making it hard for everyone to move on and past this unresolved pain and should just really let it go. This was definitely a heartbreaking story. There was one comment that gained so much attention. Let's read it. Not the a-hole. I work in nursing and ICU, and I see people like your mother-in-law often. You were done so dirty, and no one, absolutely no one, will ever understand what you and your husband went through, and the kind of horrific choices you had to make. People like to think modern medicine can cure anything, and it's just not true. Treatment can be ugly, invasive, and even lethal. And I would never blame you for a second for trying anything possible to keep your baby in this world. I also wouldn't blame you for a second if you decided not to go through with some of these harsh treatments. There's simply no right answer in these situations. Only you get to decide. I'm so sorry for your loss and that what you had to go through. Maybe I'm biased because I see people like you at work making decisions no one should ever have to make while getting yelled at by other family members who won't even come to visit. Easy to throw stones when you don't have to make such heavy decisions. You're so within your rights to never forgive that woman. I hope the best for your current pregnancy, and I'm sure this little light will help remind you and your husband what familial love really is. Guys, I think that was a beautiful comment, and it got a lot of attention. Let me know your advice that you would hand to OP in this horrible situation. The second story we're going to look at today is an Am I the A-hole story. Am I the a-hole for not treating my wife like an equal parent by telling her she has no say in the way I bond with my son? And I also called her a homophobic. Alright guys, if you're new here, click that subscribe button as we do this every single day. And if you're enjoying, hit that like button for some support. Here comes story number 2. When I, 37 male, was 17 and got my then girlfriend pregnant with twin boys, her parents did not want the babies to ruin her future, so they said that I had to either take them or give them up for adoption, because she was not raising them. I wanted to give them up, but my parents told me not to. For the first 7 years of my boy's life, I didn't act like a father and was more like a big brother. They knew I was their father though, but we never bonded like father-son. When I was ready to move out, I wanted to do it without them, but my dad let me know it was my responsibility, so I had to take them. I didn't want it at first, but I'm glad it happened. We started bonding as father-sons. I started loving them, and their love for me increased, and I remembered the three of us would sit on the couch just to watch movies. One would sit on my left and the other on my right while I wrapped my arms around them. They'd put their heads on my chest and I often kissed their forehead. We've been doing this since they were 7. I met my current wife 5 years ago. My kids were 15. We married 3 years ago after we welcomed our daughter, 4 female. She saw me doing this with my kids when we watched movies and she never said anything. My kids are no longer living with us because they left for college, but they come to see me every now and then. My boys are 20 now, but they still like to put their heads on my chest while I wrap my arms around them. They do it every time they visit and I'm watching TV. My son Liam visits me 2 weeks ago. He came out to me as gay and introduced me to his boyfriend. I don't care how my kids live their sexuality or who they love. I love them no matter what. I just want them to be happy and I don't feel any indifferent. And it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable to hug him or kiss his forehead. But it seems that my wife is a little uncomfortable. My son visited me again last Wednesday, since he was here 2 weeks ago, so the first time officially out. I was watching Red with my daughter. She was on my left, then my son Liam arrived, and he was tired and sat down on my right. Put his head on my shoulder while I wrapped my arm around them. Then I kissed his forehead and said, "Good to have you back, buddy." We went to sleep, and the next day my wife told me that it made her feel uncomfortable, me hugging and kissing my son, and asked me not to do it again while she doesn't mind me doing it with Lucas, who is my other son and he's straight. She does not want me to do it with Liam. I told her that she has no business being in my relationship with my sons. I also called her homophobic. She accused me of not treating her like an equal parent to my sons, and thus I said this: "That's okay, because you're not." My brother says I should have understood, because this is a big change for her, a son coming out. But seriously, think there's nothing to get used to? This isn't neither her nor my problem who my son loves. Am I in the wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Yeah, in my opinion, not the a-hole. I think this wife was being homophobic. But let's read a couple comments. Not the a-hole. She is being homophobic. The world needs more dads like you. And here's the highlighted comment of the story. So, let me break this opinion down from the wife. If she had a boy who was straight, then it would be a bad idea for her to kiss his forehead and hug him, because he might get the hots for his mother. What universe does this woman live in? Is her last name Duggar or something? Guys, let me know your thoughts on this story. Drop them down below and let me know if the wife was in the right position or not. The final story that we're going to look at on the day is titled, OP's high school bully was friends with benefits with their fiance and is still in her life. I'm going to be honest with you guys, this story is insane. Subscribe to the channel and let's get right into it. I'm a 26-year-old male. My wife, Becca, is 26. Her best friend, Daria, also 26, and we all went to high school together. But I ran in a very different social circle. They played sports and were decently well-known/popular. I was really into arts and computers, chubby with an awkward haircut. Well, we all went to a really large high school, so it was more that I knew of them rather than actually knowing them. Becca and Daria have been best friends since they were really young. They both moved into the same neighborhood in preschool and their parents are very close. In high school, there was this guy, Chris, who would regularly bully me. There was a name that Chris and his friends called me based on a thing that happened my sophomore year. It was essentially a trap that Chris and his friends had set up so that I would be embarrassed and they could pretend I've done it to myself. I feel like I'm already doing a bad job hiding my identity, so let's just say that the name was Stinky. I hated it. They called me this all the time and made me feel all sorts of butts and many of their jokes. Chris was very popular and was friends with Becca and Daria in high school. Chris was good looking, wealthy, and he knew it. He walked around like he was untouchable. Insert all wealthy, athletic, good-looking stereotypes that you want here. They pretty much all rang true for him, and I hated him, and hated any time that I had to be around him. I know that a lot of people face some really violent bullying, so I don't want to make it sound like I was physically tortured, but I did feel like I was relentlessly harassed. I was very thankful and excited to get out of my hometown and away from those people when I went to college. I don't know if I was growing up and growing into myself, the ability to resent my identity or just getting away from the bullies, but I really found myself in college. I'm still a bit nerdy and artistic, but I grew into my body. I started making friends and realized that I had something to offer to the world. I rapidly became a lot more confident and comfortably social. Becca and I ended up going to the same college for a few hours away, but she did not have a car. I offered her a ride just for Thanksgiving break, and it became a habit of riding together for breaks and chatting about life in school. We started to become friends and our friend group started to combine. In sophomore year, our talks became deeper and much more personal. I realized I was into her on the way home from Christmas and asked her on a date over break. We've now been together almost 7 years, engaged for the last year. We have a strong relationship, communicate well, go on regular dates and trips, and have supported each other through numerous ups and downs. We've had our fights over the years and even did some counseling together for about a year. I was bringing my parents' passive-aggressive style of fighting into our relationship, and she was assuming I was criticizing her all the time because her mom's shitty behavior. We found those times to be challenging but helpful in the long run. I love this woman and am excited to get married and spend our lives together. Becca and Daria reconnected after college, and now own a business together that plans events and helps connect people and business to local food, drinks, and other experiences. Their business really took off in the year before COVID, and they've been slowly but steadily growing back as things have been reopening. They've started to enter into a number of exclusive contracts with event spaces and restaurants/breweries. In a market where things can turn quickly, these deals are super important, and they provide a lot of security for their company. Becca came home about 2 months ago really excited about a brand new brewery exploring an exclusive deal. About a week later, the brewery signed and there was a dinner to celebrate. Becca asked if I want to come and meet the team for the brewery. She told me that I might have met the owner before, but I guess I did not think to ask who it was, because I did not know how it was going to go into the dinner. If you're still with me, you can probably guess who the brewery owner is. I was sitting at the table with Becca waiting for the rest of the group to arrive, when Chris came through the door, walked up to the table, greeted Becca, and turned to me and said, "Oh, hey, Stinky." I was immediately confused and angry. She knew that I knew Chris, and she knew that he had harassed me throughout high school. She did not mention at any prior point that he was the owner of the brewery and that she was working closely with him. I got through the dinner, but on the way home, when I asked why she did not tell me, she blew it off, as though it was water under the bridge. That I've changed, and I should understand that Chris has changed too. I was still upset, but tried to let bygones be bygones. Over the next couple of weeks, it was clear that Daria and Chris were becoming romantically involved with each other. Becca and I usually spend 2 to 3 nights a week with Daria, whether going out or simply watching TV at our house. We often joke that we're a throuple, but to be clear, that's not the case and we have a strictly platonic relationship. Over the last month or so, Chris started showing up to nights out, and even coming over one night to Daria's house when we were hanging out and watching TV. I've tried to be open to a new Chris, but he seems like he's the same overly macho, trying to be hard alpha jerk he was all those years ago. I tried to bring up to Becca that the casual relationship between Daria and Chris is probably not good for their business. While Becca did agree, she felt like she could not tell her friends who to not date or sleep with. Last week, Becca invited me along to an industry event. I got there to unfortunately find Chris is there as well. I tried to be friendly and nice. We got a table of 4 for us and had some drinks and food. At one point, the girls leave to network with a couple of potential clients. Out of nowhere, Chris starts talking about how this event might be good for a place for him, and Daria to find a woman to have a threesome with. It caught me completely off guard. I asked him what he's talking about, and he says that him and Daria want to have another threesome, and that I should know all about that. I was super confused, and asked what he was talking about, and he proceeded to tell me that him, Daria, and Becca had a couple of threesomes in high school, and that he figured I was having a threesome with the 2 girls as well. I felt blindsided and did not know what to say. When we got home, Becca already knew I was upset, and asked me what was wrong. I told her about what Chris had said, and she tried to deny it at first, but then told me it was partially true. What Becca told me was that Daria and Chris were friends with benefits for a bit at the end of the senior year right before college. Chris and Daria spent a few weeks talking with her about having a threesome with them, but she was on the fence. At a party when everyone was tipsy, it was brought up again and she went to the bedroom with them. Also, a note for the moderators, they were all 18 at the time. Well, they all stripped down and did a lot of kissing and touching, but Becca backed up of having sex and instead just watched them. On Thanksgiving break of freshman year, the 3 talked about going all the way with it, but ended up not being able to find a free time for all of them. Daria then got a boyfriend and it was never brought up again. All of this was news to me though. In addition to not really coming into myself until college, I was a late bloomer in terms of relationship. Becca was my first everything. I knew and was not upset that she had sex before, but we never really have gone into that, when or who it was. Becca keeps saying that I never asked her, and she never lied about all this. But especially with doing business with Chris, it feels like lying by omission to me. I don't know, I'm struggling with all this. Chris did his best to make my life awful in high school and now is back. Almost every time I spend time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better with me and was dating down. She told me later that it was a joke and stop being so sensitive. It seems like this threesome sex thing is just one more thing he can hold over me. He's a snake and always seems to say the worst stuff to me when Becca and Daria are just out of earshot. We've been arguing about the situation for about a week now. I asked Becca to cut all contact with him last night. She told me I was being unreasonable. He was the best friend, they all do business together. I asked if it was that Daria and her need his brewery contract, and she keeps asking me why I can't move on and accept that Chris is a different person. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. This story is just boiling up. I found a commented update from the original thread that was posted 3 months after the original post. That's right, a complete update, and let me tell ya, it dropped some bombs on ya. If you're enjoying today's stories, please support the channel by subscribing and consider pressing the like button. Here comes the much-awaited update. In the last post, I wrote that I wasn't looking to break up with my fiancé. Rather, I was looking how to fix things. Almost all the comments were about how I needed to break up with this girl, call her out on her manipulative bullcrap, etc. I was really pissed with the majority of advice I got and figured that you guys just didn't know what you were talking about. I guess those would be my famous last words. And the week after I made my initial post, Becca and I seemed to have a daily fight about her and Chris. I came home from work one day after having a long fight the night before to find Becca not in the house. This wasn't surprising in the moment, and she works a really irregular schedule. But then I noticed that a bunch of her things were missing. I tried to text her making sure she was okay and got a long text in response about how she was going to stay with her sister and how she needed some space for me not to contact her for a few days. I was confused, frustrated, and upset, but figured that if all she needed was some space, hopefully that would be what could get our relationship back on track. The next night, Daria texted me asking if she could come over and talk. When she got there, she told me how she's been a bad friend to me. Basically, there was a number of things she felt like she should tell me, but did not know where to draw the line between her friendship with me and her friendship with Becca. We talked for a few hours and multiple things came out. First thing. A few months before, Becca told Daria, but she was doubting our relationship. Becca told her that she felt like we have gotten together so young, that she was missing out on experiencing by being with me. Note, Becca never said anything about this to me. When I was thinking later about what Daria had told me this night, I remembered that months prior, Becca had this really weird week, where she was really distant and just kept asking me questions about what it was about her that made me want to get married. She told me that later she had just been in a weird headspace and I kind of forgot about those convos. Number 2. When Becca and Daria first met with Chris, Becca was really flirty with him. In their industry or work connections, it's not uncommon for people to do things like a bit of flirtiness, a little touchy with each other, or talk about their sex lives. This was always something I'd find weird or uncomfortable, but knew it to be culture of the industry. But in this case, Daria said it went enough with Chris that she noticed it as strange. Once Daria told Becca that she had started hooking up with Chris, Becca would regularly ask for details, so much so that Daria told me she started lying to Becca, saying that their hookups weren't happening and less frequently than they were actually happening, so that she would not be hounded for details. A week or so before Becca and I fought about her connection with Chris, Becca was hounding Daria for details on the latest hookup and casually dropped that they should have a threesome with Chris. Daria said that she was super uncomfortable and immediately brought up Becca and my relationship. Becca said that she was just joking, but made the same, quote, joke 3 or 4 times until Daria said directly to her that it made her uncomfortable and that she needed to stop. Then she got the biggest thing. On the night that Becca left, she showed up drunk at Chris's place. He let her in and then she tried to sleep with him. I guess Daria was in the bedroom or something, because after a bit, Daria came out to see Becca trying to grab at Chris, so they worked together to kick her out. Angry, sad, and confused, I packed my shit and left our place. I did not want to be there in case she came back, so I stayed with a friend for a bit. I didn't even try to reach out to Becca and did not want to hear from her either. Well, about 2 weeks after Daria came to talk, my mom passed away. She had a stroke years ago and had been declining for a long time. Her passing wasn't unexpected, but that did not mean it wasn't super hard. It was always just me and Mom growing up. I was struggling a lot and felt so alone. I almost called Becca a number of times. The day of the funeral, Becca showed up. At first, I was happy to see her. She was by my side much of the day, and I was thankful she was there. Things felt normal with her there. I felt secure. I felt like we were together again, a team again. Then, when people were coming up to me after the burial, Becca said to one of my old neighbors about how sad we were, how hard it's been on us, and how we've tried and needed to rely on others. It was as though there was a fog in my head that instantly lifted. I started flipping out on her. In hindsight, I felt bad about the scene that I caused at my own mom's funeral, but I could not believe she was pretending that we were together. That she had been supporting me and she had tried to duck another guy a couple weeks before. I was really happy that my cousin stepped in and told her to leave. I blocked her on everything since my fiancé and mom are the only things keeping me in that area. A little over a week after the funeral, I packed up. I moved to the East Coast where my cousin lives. I've been here for a little under 2 months, and I wish I could say that I'm in a job making a lot more money than I have a hot new girlfriend, but it's been a struggle to settle in. I'm in my same job, working remote, but I need to travel to be home to the city every few weeks. I feel anxious here, worried that I will run into Chris or Becca. My cousin has tried to be welcoming, and I'm thankful he's given me a landing pad, as I've always looked up at my own place, but him and his friends are older, and they're mostly focused on family life, so it's been hard to make friends. I've signed up for a volleyball beer league, though, this fall, so hopefully there's some good people there. I'm just so glad that the OP ended the story getting away from these toxic people. The thing that caught me up was Chris has changed. Yeah, Chris has changed, right? First thing he said to him was, "Hi, Stinky." Yeah, sounds like change, doesn't it? Alright guys, let me know about your comments on this story, and what would you do if you were OP and you found out all this crazy news, and your high school bully was yet back again? Drop your thoughts down below on this one. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to these stories. We do this every single day, so stop by. Remember, it's cool to be kind. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hoo, 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 hoo.